guys, and welcome back to the Crawl Room. We're here once again in this wonderful ranty room for all things Formula 1. And before we kick things off with the final Crawl Room of the season, I'd just like to apologise if this episode's a bit more choppy and changey than usual. I am unfortunately poorly sick and dying. I have got the death, and it is really affecting me. Man flu has come and got me big time, and yeah, it's going to be a bit of a struggle to get through this, but I am a trooper. I am a trooper, and I just want you all to know how much I am a trooper, and I want you all to tell me how much of a trooper I am, because I need it, because I'm needy. And your comments of, oh, get well soon, will soothe me and butter me up like a good old Lemsip, and will make me feel better in no time, I'm sure. So if you've never seen this series before, I award the drivers out of a maximum of 10 points based on their race weekend's performance, and I go all the way down to 0 if they have a particularly bad one. Look out for bonus points though, they're sometimes on offer some drivers that do something extra special during a race weekend, and on the very rare occasion I do award minus points to those drivers that do something extra special, but for all the wrong reasons. So let's take a look at the final standings then. They're on the screen now for you. Here we go. A champion will be crowned at the end of this. It might have all been wrapped up in bloody Holland 14 months ago for this season, but here right now the Crawl Room 2022 Championship is still all up for grabs. Take a look and see where your favourite driver is. Can you see them jumping up to the top and taking victory, or will they fall all the way down to the bottom with a disqualification? Who knows? It's all to play for, of course, all to play for. It looks like George has got a firm hold on this championship though, after pretty much coming undone after the mid-season, but that win at Brazil could have just saved him. But, as said, all will be revealed in just a few moments' time. So let's kick things off with the race winner, of course, then Max Verstappen. And what do we say about his race? Not a lot, because he's been disqualified. Unfortunately for Max, his antics in Brazil have meant that he is disqualified, and that means we don't talk about his race whatsoever, really. But all I will say is, it was pole position, a P1, prick. There you go. Unfortunately, his antics involving Checo have just really put a pay to his what should be a whole praise and could have been a 2022 Crawl Room champion as well as a driver's champion as well. So needs to think a bit more cautiously next season, obey team orders, and just play a more team player role in 2023 if he is to win and have a chance at the Crawl Room Championship next year. Because for me, one disobeyment of team orders is normally Palmer worthy, but the way he did it this time around was disqualification worthy. So yeah, Max Verstappen could have won this championship, but he's lost it, and oh well, there we go. So yeah, he won the race. Well done to Max, great season and all, but unforgiven, and will remain unforgiven, so he remains disqualified on the Crawl Room. Next up is Sha-la-la. Here he is, Sha-la-la, in his way into P2 in the race and P2 in the Drivers' Championship. Great effort by Sha-la-la there. It looked like the Red Bulls were just going to be dominating, wasn't it? But Red Bull elected to put Checo onto a two-stop strategy. Ferrari were like, just hold out on these hard tyres. The mediums to start the race, Ferrari really didn't have the pace at all, but then on the hard tyres, especially with the likes of Charles, he was edging in, and reeling in Sergio, which created Red Bull to pit Perez and get him out. And then in the end, it was all down to the tyres at the end of the race. Leclerc's tyres were 12 laps older than Checo's, but unfortunately for Checo, couldn't reel him in, and that meant that Leclerc finishes second in the race, second in the driver's standings, and as much as Verstappen annoyed me in Brazil, what he did there didn't affect the results here. Charles finishing P2 would have still been enough to net him second in the championship. So that takes a little bit of edge off what Max did, but still not forgiven. And yeah, for Cha-la-la-la-la-la-la-la-la-la-la-la-la-la, it's going to be 10 points on the Crawl Room Championship. He rounds off the season with a solid 10 points. Fantastic effort by Cha-la-la. As mentioned, the pace really wasn't there at the start of the race, but once they went onto that hard tyre and they could just eke those tyres out for longer, he was able to put in steady, consistent laps to make sure that Perez, although he did sort of become a threat within that 1.5 second window, just could never get within DRS and couldn't get past him. So yeah, well done, Sha-la-la. 10 points to you. And in third place, wrapping up the podium places and of course finishing third in the championship overall. So how they finished in this race in the top three is how they finished in the championship overall. So there he is. Checo, Sergio Perez, third place. A little bit disappointed, but nice to see him do donuts at the end there with Charles and Max. I mean, at the end of the day, what's the difference between second and third? It'd have been nice to see Checo get second place, but he didn't. Who cares? You want number one, don't you, really? Let's be honest. It's very rare that you're ever going to say, oh, desperate for that second place. You'd have wanted the first position. So maybe that's what Checo will aim for next year. Maybe he'll disobey team orders a bit more. Remains to be seen, of course. But for Sergio Perez overall this race weekend, I'm going to award him 8 points. 8 points. I think that's a solid enough score. You know, it was okay front row lockout. The first 1-2 on the grid for Red Bull since Mexico 2018, which blew me away. And I thought the dominance this year, that had happened once before at least, but it didn't. Yeah, an interesting stat that really took me by surprise. So, in theory, look, you know, Perez should have got Leclerc, but I think had Perez stayed out and Leclerc pitted, I think Leclerc would have still got Perez, because Perez just seemed to be struggling on those hard tyres more than Charles. So, yeah, I mean, we don't know, do we? But that's it. It does all by the by. Third in the championship, doesn't really matter, and still denies Red Bull of a 1-2 finish in the Drivers' Championship ever. They've never had that, despite the dominant years. It's never happened. Crazy, crazy, crazy stuff. So yeah, 8 points to Checo. Smooth operator, smooth operator. And there he was in P4. What could be said for his race, really? It was probably about the most exciting out of the top 6, really. You know, had a look up the inside of Hamilton at turn 5 or whatever it is. I'm not even sure. But the same place where Max had a go at him last year. So yeah, Charles went up the inside, forced Hamilton wide. Hamilton went over a sausage curb and just carried on. Initially, it didn't look like they were going to relinquish the positions, but then they had to. And Hamilton got back through Sainz after he let him through. And overall then, it looked like the pace just dropped off that Mercedes of Hamilton. He was complaining of issues from early on, even though they were saying there wasn't any issues. So Sainz was able to re-overtake him. And yeah, Carlos Sainz then just stayed P4. He was close to his teammate after Leclerc exited the pits. Sainz pitted before him. And then that was that. That was about as exciting as it got. P4, wasn't a podium. There wasn't really any threat from Mercedes then at that point to overhaul Ferrari of the P2 in the Constructors. So, yeah, you know, it was just a lonely P4 then in the end for Sainz, and a solid enough way to finish off his season. I think he finishes 6th in the standings, does he? He's had an unlucky year, hasn't he? It might be 5th, I'm not sure, but either way, not a great way to end his season nonetheless. But, yeah, the Ferrari pace has just really dipped off in recent form, in recent races. So, we'll see what happens, of course, later on in the season with Fred Vasseur and Binotto, whether they're swapping places and whatnot. But for Carlos Sainz, it is 8 points on the cruel room to him. I think in the end, that's as fair as he's going to get. I gave Checo 8. I think Sainz deserves 8. So yeah, there you go. 8 points to Carlos Sainz. And then we come to George of the Russell. Watch out for that top 5. Yes, I've been singing it all season long pretty much, but since this mid-summer break and coming back after that, it all went a bit wayward and a bit south for George, didn't it? We've had some tough races. A strong victory, of course, in Brazil, really put him back at the firm hold of the championship standings for the cruel room, of course, and put him firmly ahead of Lewis in the overall Drivers' Championship, which it becomes only the 3rd ever driver to beat Hamilton in a season. Button, of course, back in 2011, Nico Rosberg for the championship in 2016, and now here, George of the Russell in 2022. So, George's race, really, it was going okay. It looked like he was going to be 5th, wasn't it? Then he had the 5-second time penalty for the unsafe pit release, which he served in the pits. And then that was like, well, there you go, it's just going to be 6th now instead. And then Hamilton dropped out late on, which put George back to 5th. So it didn't really matter. The Mercedes didn't really have the pace that they should have done. It looked like they were getting good at one stage, though. It looked like Ferrari were really under threat. And then when everyone pitted for hards again, it looked like Ferrari were the better car again. They buggered off into the distance and then put Red Bull under pressure while Mercedes just stayed still. So, yeah, all a bit up and down, but really never got on the pedestal of looking like a podium challenger at all. So, for George Russell this weekend, it's ending his season off with a solid 7. He was out-qualified by his teammate. He would have been out-raced by his teammate, weren't it, for the late retirement. But the pace of the car overall, one of those things. So, yeah, a solid 7 for for George Russell. Then we come to Lando Norris in the McLaren, securing 6th place. It would have been 7th, of course, but with Hamilton's late retirement, 6th place was what he mustered up, and what a fantastic effort. Best of the rest once again, Lando. Another impressive storming drive. Did all he could be asked of him to try and relinquish and regain some points on Alpine, of course, which was always going to be a tall order and didn't happen. But at least he put his car in the best situation possible. Fantastic effort in qualifying, fantastic in the race. Yeah, a lonely race though. He had no one around him, was he? The gaps to the car ahead was too much, but he gapped Ocon quite significantly. So he was just able to save his tyres, keep it on a one-stop strategy, and did a fantastic job. So overall, it's going to be 10 points to Lando Norris. A cracking effort. Perfect 10. He has done a stunning job this year for McLaren, isn't it? It's been Ricciardo that's let him down for not securing 4th in the Constructors. But basing on where McLaren started this year, like down in 14th and 16th at Bahrain, P nowhere, and you're like, wow, are they even going to score points? To then a podium at Imola, and the progression they've made throughout the season. Okay, they've lost out to 4th in the Constructors in the end, but from where they started to where they finished, I think they've got to thank Lando a lot for what he's done this year, and he has done a superb job, hasn't he? So yeah, Lando Norris, congratulations to him. A perfect 10 on the crawl room. Then we come to Esteban Ocon, sacre bleu, Esteban Ocon. What could be said for his race weekend overall? Again, another strong performance by him. Ahead of Alonso in the qualifying, ahead of him in the race, and then when Alonso retired, that was that anyway, but he was ahead of him at all situations, all scenarios. It would have been nice to see Ocon ahead of Norris, of course. They're the two main championship protagonists in, of course, that P4 battle, so, you know, Alpine would have really just wanted him to be ahead of the McLaren to definitely confirm P4, but like I say, in the end, it was a lot of points that McLaren needed and wasn't really going to happen. But Ocon overall, you know, solid season this season. He outscores Fernando Alonso overall this year, which is the first time in quite a while. I'm trying to think when that last happened for Alonso being outscored by a teammate. Yeah, it must have been a while ago. Maybe Button did it in 2015, perhaps when the car was dog shit. Yeah, maybe that season. But even then, I can't think of any others because the Ferrari seasons, he was always beating Massa and Raikkonen, wasn't he? So, yeah, it's been a long time for Alonso. But nonetheless, for Esteban Ocon, it is going to be 8.5 to end his season off with on the crawl room. Again, a solid job, a solid season. Let the team down at times, particularly at Brazil. Lucky not to get a Palmer there, the pair of them, but there was far worse out there, wasn't there? Yeah, overall, a great drive and a great race weekend to end the season, as he becomes team leader in 2023 as well. Let's see what happens there. But yeah, for now, 8.5 to Ocon. Then we come to Lance Stroll securing 8th place in the race. Yeah, was put on a lot better strategy than what Sebastian Vettel was. Again, I mean, how many times have we seen that of late? You know, recent races, Brazil, Mexico as well, I think I'd like to add there. Was Singapore the same? A lot of recent races where Sebastian Vettel's been hampered on strategy compared to the son of the owner of the team. Not sure how I sit with that quite, but, you know, here he is finishing 8th place, which is the best anyone could have hoped from him with the strategy he had, you know. Was out in Q2, P13 was it? Elevated to P12 with Ricciardo's penalty, and then made his way up through the field to secure 8th place as a result of a 2-stop, and he had a lot of pace on those mediums at the end, didn't he? I mean, he came out of the pits on the mediums for his 2nd stop and was only 4 seconds behind Vettel that was on a 1-stop, so shows you all you need to know about which strategy was right and which was wrong there, didn't it? So, yeah, Lance Stroll, 4 points, an 8th place finish. As much as I hate to say it, and I think it's a bit shit that the team really screwed over Seb, and not for the first time, I can't fault Stroll because he delivered all the points he could, delivered the best result he could, and just nearly nabbed that 6th place in the Constructors off of Alfa Romeo, didn't he? Did the Aston Martin team. They literally tie on points, but as a result of countback, it is Alfa Romeo that get it, so they just needed 1 more point, which they would have got if they'd put Seb on the same or similar strategy. That's not Stroll's fault, though. So it's 9 points to Lance Stroll this year, ending the season off strongly with a good race, making some good overtakes, some good moves when he needed to, and was sensible. I can't argue with that. 9 points to Stroll. Then we come to Daniel Ricciardo, disqualified on the cruel room anyway, of course, and has been for a long, long time. But finishing in the points in his final race in Formula 1 for maybe a year, maybe 2 years, maybe he won't ever come back. Let's wait and see. Potential reserve driver role at Red Bull available for him. Could that see him back at AlphaTauri if Tsunoda's doing shite next season? Potentially. That's where I'm thinking he could head next. Would he want to do it? I think he just wants a seat in Formula 1, doesn't he? Let's be honest with you. But yeah, that's my train of thought at the minute. Get him as a reserve driver. Tsunoda doesn't deliver in the first few races of next season. Chuck Tsunoda out, stick Ricciardo in. It can't be any worse, can it? Let's put it that way. So yeah, disqualified in the cruel room anyway. Nice to see him end the season with a couple of points. He overcame the penalty, qualifying 10th, dropped to 13th, finished 9th. Best he could have done with the car he had. Probably, realistically, should have finished ahead of an Aston Martin, but the pace of that Aston Martin on the 2-stop was a lot better and a lot stronger, and he did keep Vettel behind as well. So yeah, there you go. Disqualified anyway, but an okay end to a difficult, well, I think difficult's being light there, isn't it? A poor season by Daniel Ricciardo. And last, but by no means least, inside the top 10, securing his final ever Formula 1 World Championship point, it is Sebastian Vettel. As already mentioned with Stroll, Vettel was put on the wrong strategy. Absolutely put on the wrong strategy. He wouldn't have been scoring this point if it wasn't without Hamilton's retirement. It'd have been a P11 finish. And from where he started, from where he qualified, qualifying P9 on merit, that was an amazing effort. He had some serious pace throughout qualifying, and then he was as high as 7th in the race without pit stops. It was in the battle and in the fringes of the Alpines. And there's Ocon finishing up in 7th, and here's Vettel scraping one lucky point as a result of a DNF at the end. So, yeah, big shame for Seb this. Disappointing. And if Aston Martin had just put him on the same strategy or a similar strategy to Stroll, they'd have definitely been 8th and 9th, and that'd have been a 12 million point swing in their difference for securing 6th in the championship instead of 7th. A big payday was missed there, and I don't think that was Seb's fault. Let's put it that way. He did all he could this weekend. So, for Sebastian Vettel, earns driver of the day, of course, as well. I mean, fair enough for that. And this may be a sympathetic point score, but at the same time, I think he thoroughly deserved it. It's going to be 11 on the cruel room for that result. Into Q3, P9 in qualifying, running as high as 7th in the race on merit before pit stops and before everything, etc. Doing a cracking job to be put on a shafted strategy and still managing to secure a point, and did everything he could to get past Daniel Ricciardo, but just wasn't enough as his tyres dropped off at the end. I think he did a great job, Seb. So yeah, going to miss you, Seb. Love you to pieces. I don't think that's the last we're ever going to see him in Formula 1 paddock anyway. But in terms of racing, that's him over and out. Congratulations, Seb, and you end your season off with 11 points on the cruel room. Then we come to the one just finishing outside the points. It is Yuki Tsunoda, disqualified on the cruel room anyway. But overall, I think he had a good weekend for the car he had. Just on the verge of points there, not quite getting one at the end. Ahead of his teammate all weekend long as well. Let's not forget that. Although I don't really agree with the strategy Gasly went on. So, that helps Tsunoda in that sense. But, overall for Tsunoda, it's been a poor season. He shouldn't really be getting another chance. But as mentioned, if Ricciardo goes to reserve driver for Red Bull and Yuki doesn't deliver the results that they're expecting early on in the season, they could well potentially swap him out. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, Yuki Tsunoda missing out on points but an okay race weekend. Disqualified on the cruel room anyway, though, unfortunately for him. Then finishing in 12th position, it is Zhou Guanyu, a couple of places away from the points. Alfa Romeo looking very poor this race, though, weren't they? The amount of times we were seeing them battling down at the back as opposed to the front. The fact he finished 12th, I think, is a miracle in itself. Really just didn't have the pace this weekend, did they? Outqualified his teammate, though. Bottas out in Q1. If I remember rightly, I might have got that wrong. I've been poorly sick and dying, forgive me. I think all in all, though, for Zhou, it's been a great season. He's won Rookie of the Year. I didn't think that were a thing when there only one rookie on the grid. So that was a bit strange to see. But at least he won it. And in all fairness, I think he would have deserved it anyway. I think he's done a great job for Alfa Romeo. It would have been nice to see him score some more points. I think some silly rookie errors early in the year cost him more points. But they did in the end hang on to 6th in the Constructors, and that has to somewhat go down to Zhou's performance as well as it does for Bottas's. So yeah, overall, finishing the season 12th, it's 7.5 to Zhou Guanyu. A strongish rookie season, I would say, and I think if he carries this momentum forward, he should be in for a good result and a good string of points next season. Alfa Romeo got to keep it up as well, of course, though, haven't they? So yeah, overall, ending a solid rookie season with a solid 7.5 on the Cruel Room. Then we come to Alexander Albon finishing in 13th place. Unlucky for some, but I think Alex this race has done an impeccable job with the car he had. Qualifying, I mean, I think this is the 3rd time in 6 races or 5 races where Williams have lined up on the back row, 19th and 20th. So I don't really think Alex could have extracted any more out of the car than possible. I mean, we forget about Latifi, but, you know, I think sometimes Alex has been unlucky in that situation to end up 19th, but in others, yeah, it's just been a lack of car performance, really, hasn't it? Which has been a big shame. But in the race, he manages to do some cracking jobs. It was high as 14th, wasn't it? Prior to the pit stops, he'd made that progress himself, getting ahead of the Haasers and ahead of Gasly. So did some really good jobs and some really good overtakes to get himself into a respectable midfield position. And was running around in 14th there, and then obviously Hamilton's late retirement gifted him up into 13th place. But it was ahead of some good cars there, some big rivals, 2 Haasers and Alfa Romeo. You know, his teammate, I mean, his teammate don't count, but anyway, you know, ahead of some cars that should really, in theory, have been ahead of him. So Alexander Albon, I feel, finishes his season off strongly there. And I'm going to award him 8.5 on the Cruel Room. I think that's a solid way for Albon to end off his season. Logan Sargent now got enough super license points. I think he finished 4th in the Drivers' Championship in F2 overall, which makes sure he's got enough to secure that Williams seat for 2023. So a new teammate alongside him, which will hopefully be able to push him more, and Albon will be able to learn from Logan just as much as the other way around, you know, because I think there'll be a good relationship there, and hopefully they can both carry Williams forward into next year. But for now, overall, Albon, some great performances this year, some performances that have gone under the radar because he hasn't scored points. And I mean, to come back, just to come back after a couple of weeks after nearly dying, I think has to be commended this season as well, to even turn up in Japan and turn up in Singapore, you know. So impeccable stuff. Albon has had a great season this season, and he thoroughly deserves the 8.5 I'm awarding him for his final race this season. Then we come to Pierre Gasly, and yeah, compromised all race long, wasn't it, on a ridiculously ridiculous strategy. I think that's all I can say, really. Out in Q1, disappointing. Fell backwards on the soft tyre while everyone else was on the medium. So that wasn't impressive. And then, yeah, what could we say for that then? It was just on a compromised strategy the rest of the race. Out of position, out of sync. Had some battles with cars that he shouldn't have been battling with, really. And in fairness to him, I've given him a generous point score here because I felt I was maybe a little bit harsh awarding him the Palmer last time out when others maybe deserved it, like the Alpines. But, you know, Pierre Gasly's not stunning. I'm not awarding him a perfect 10, far from it. I'm giving him 6 points on the Cruel Room this race. I think realistically I've added him 2 points on there to what he maybe should have got, which makes up for some consolation to what happened at Brazil and me awarding him a Palmer. But yeah, it was just a difficult race. Wrong tyres to start the race on, and Abu Dhabi's still a difficult track to overtake at, and he couldn't make any progress. So that was that. 6 points to Gasly. Then we come to Valtteri Bottas, stuck on the hard tyres at the start of the race, which sent him backwards, and he was behind all of the field except Latifi by the time he even pitted for his first stop, and everyone else had already stopped and pitted and were already ahead of him. So a bad strategy by Alfa Romeo to do that with Bottas, who was out in Q1. I do believe he was out in Q1. I can't remember fully, but he must have been right down the pecking order for him to try something different. Nonetheless, didn't work, and I'm awarding him 5 points. Middle of the road 5 to Bottas there. The strategy really just hindered him, hampered him. It was at, like I say, it was at the back, and he'd not even stopped for his tyres yet because everyone else had already beat him. So yeah, it was never going to happen for Bottas, was it? They should have just parked the car up and retire it. Terrible race. So yeah, 5 points to Valtteri Bottas, and a shame for him to end his season like that, but at least Alfa Romeo did secure 6th place in the Constructors with the amount of points that Bottas picked up at the start of the year. So he has done some good for Alfa Romeo, definitely this season. Just a shame it ended the way it did, but maybe next year he can come back stronger. But for now, 5 points on the crawl room. And next up, in 16th place, it is, of course, Mick Schumacher.
I can't believe Alpine signed Gasly. I thought I'd be in there because I'm still waiting to finish my season off with them since 2017.
Oh, Mick. Mick. Ends his season with a Palmer. That's 5 Palmers in a season. And you could see why Gunter got rid of you, really, can't you now, with 5 Palmers. Yeah, Mick's lost his seat. I do hope to see Mick back. I think if Tsunoda's got the chance of another season, Mick certainly deserved one. He just did too much damage in the early races of the season, didn't he? Just too many silly incidents and threw points away. Miami was a turning point as well, where he made that silly mistake on Seb when he could have scored, was that 9th? That would have been 2 points. I mean, in the end, they secured 8th in the Constructors. They wouldn't have got anything really any better because the gap to the cars around them, the teams around them, became too much. But yeah, it was just a difficult way to end the season. Tagging Latifi, I mean, of all people you shouldn't be racing with, he was down there with Latifi. So, I mean, yeah, what a shame. What a shame for Mick. So yeah, ends his season with a Palmer. Finishes last in the crawl room standings by a country mile, I think, with that one. But we'll have a look at the end, of course. And yeah, I hope to see Mick return to Formula 1. I really do. I think he has got some potential. He has shown the potential, but he showed it too late. He'd done all the damage early on, and I think the mind was already made up by Haas to not have him anymore. And there we go. But nonetheless, Power of the Week 2, Mick Schumacher. And then we come to the last finisher on this list, Kevin Magnussen. And what could be said for Kevin's race? He was just literally the same as Bottas, really, wasn't he? Just put on the hard tyres to start the race and was firmly last. And last. And he couldn't do anything about it. A couple of good overtakes here and there, I suppose, on cars that were as poorly sick and dying as I was. But yeah, overall, K-Mag 6 points is all I've given him. Generous, I think he did all he could. The Haas didn't look to have the pace, and then he was put on a strategy that certainly didn't have the pace. And where could you expect him to be? He was going to be last, wasn't he? So yeah, there you go. K-Mag 6 points on the crawl room. I'd just like to apologise for the lighting as well now. It's all gone a bit funny because it's got dark and whatever, but And then we come to the first retirement on this list, the last in the race, of course. And let's be clear about this. I think he was actually classified, but he was out, wasn't he? He pulled into the pits and retired. It's Lewis Hamilton. What a shame. The first mechanical failure for a Mercedes this season. It comes at the final race of the year. Big shame, really. That was a shame. I think maybe the damage was done at the first lap where Sainz tried to go up Hamilton's inside and Hamilton hit that sausage curb and went airborne and then went bang and landed back down. Could have maybe shaken some things to bits. Hamilton certainly wasn't happy with the car from that moment on, really. So I think damage may have been done and maybe something popped off there with a couple of laps left to go. A shame for his season to end like that. I mean, it's his first season without a pole position. It's his first season without a win. And obviously, judging by that race, it was never going to win. It was aiming for 5th. But it was just a shame to see it a retirement. It'd have been nice to see him cross the line, pick up some more points, and literally draw a line under the season by just at least having an okay race rather than a retirement. It was a shame in that sense. So yeah, for as you all know, the retirements I only score a maximum of 5 points. And for Lewis Hamilton, it is going to be those 5 points he achieves for his race weekend's performance. It was all a bit of a shame, wasn't it, to end his season like that? And they were looking so good, Mercedes, in the earlier 2 races, but this time they just fell short with pace, and then reliability finally let them down. So there we go, middle of the road 5 to Lewis Hamilton. Next up on this list is Nicholas Latifi, the last time you will see the clown. Big shame for Nick there, wasn't it? It wasn't really. I didn't even know he was in the race until Mick took him out. So yeah, miles behind everyone as per the norm. Not doing very well, and then he got took out, and then he carried on for a bit, and then he finally retired. Not interested. Nicholas Latifi leaves the sport. Hallelujah. And last but by no means least, it's Fernando Alonso. Oh, Fernando, another retirement to finish your season. What's this? That was Singapore, Mexico, here. Did it happen anywhere else as well? I can't quite remember, but either way, it was quite substantial, the amount of retirements he's had in this last half of the season, isn't it? And now he ends it with another one. As always, middle of the row 5 can only be awarded to a retirement, and Fernando has been hampered by those retirements in the Crawl Room Championship, hasn't he? Big shame. I think he could have had a chance of winning it again this year, particularly after the surge that he had with his pace and performance, but then was let down by the car. So that's racing, and it's the middle of the row 5 to end Fernando Alonso's 2022 Crawl Room campaign. So there we have it, guys. Those were the runners and riders of the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. Let me know your thoughts and feedback down below. Did I score any drivers too high? Any too low? I normally show you the scoreboard here now, but instead it's going to be the podium. Let's see where the 3 finish. Who are the top 3 in this championship? Have you any guesses? Do you know? Have you worked out the points what I've awarded here? Can you work out the top 3? Well, in 3rd place, I am pleased to reveal, spraying the yazoo, it's going to be Sha-la-la. Well done, Sha-la-la. 3rd place in the Crawl Room standings. Well done, Sha-la-la. Cracking effort. Everyone loves you. Well done, Shal. Him securing 2nd place in the Drivers' Championship and Fernando Alonso's DNF put him up a position which enabled him to finish 3rd place. Cracking stuff. Finishing in 2nd place in the Crawl Room Championship of 2022 and spraying the Frosty Jacks apple cider, it is Lando Norris. What a fantastic effort by Lando, securing 2nd place in the Crawl Room standings. He has done phenomenally well this season once again. He did all he could do to secure 4th place in the Constructors' standings for McLaren, of course. Fell short only as a result of a woeful teammate. He really did all he could. There were certain moments, Brazil, where he took out Sha-la-la, that really cost him the Crawl Room Championship. But in the end, I think there is one worthy winner, isn't there? There is one worthy winner, and no one will stop me from congratulating George of the Russell. Watch out for that Crawl Room title. Here he is. Victory and spraying the champagne. It's George of the Russell. Incredible effort, George. Fantastic stuff. Really chuffed for you. Unbelievable effort. He really has done well this season. Like I said, it all was coming undone for him in the mid-season. You know, we had the silly Singapore, we had some stupid decisions, some silly mistakes, Japan, and it was all unravelling. But he dug deep. He knew that the overall championship wasn't on the line, but the Crawl Room title was. And the cracking victory in Brazil put him just enough points ahead to make sure that realistically, if he scored any points here at Abu Dhabi and wasn't awarded an Palmer, he would become the champion. And there he is. He has become Crawl Room champion of 2022. Congratulations, George Russell. Give him a round of applause, everyone. Big hand, everyone. A cracking effort. Now, I'm all sure you'd like to know where the rest of the drivers finished this season, so the table is on the screen now for you to take a look at. Soak it all in, soak it all up. It has been a really close run thing this season. Well, having said that, it looked like George got it running away, didn't he? 13-point advantage he had at one point and threw it all away. But, you know, the Palmer at the crucial stage for Lando, the disqualification for Max Verstappen, and then the win. It all came back to him at Brazil, didn't it? It really did. And that netted him the Crawl Room Championship of 2022. There's quite a lot of other runners and riders in that have done really well given their car performance. There's some drivers that have done incredibly badly given their car performance as well. And yeah, you know, it's been one hell of a ride this season. It really has been. We've had some cracking high moments for the channel, for introducing it to new fans. It's been a real pleasure to present to you these races for 22 times. I'd just like to say it's been an absolute pleasure, as always, to have you with me to do this silly little series on YouTube that gets the views it does. I mean, we're averaging 500 views an episode. We sometimes get the videos that push 1,000. We've had Monaco that got 3,000 views. You know, we've had some real high moments here on the Crawl Room this season, and as always, this is so much fun for me to do, to be able to engage, interact with you guys, and leave you genuine thoughts and opinions down below, because we've built up a fan base now that respects other people's opinions. You know, we can have a conversation, not just with me, but with other fans of the series as well. We can have that chat, we can have that discussion. And even if you don't agree, you can find a happy medium. You can find a ground where you're all happy. You know, you can agree to disagree. And I think in the world, it's a rarity to get that now. And I'm so happy that this series is a safe platform for Formula One fans to come and voice their opinions and have a discussion, because, as mentioned, you can't do it on Twitter, you can't do it on social media anymore. You're just fucking shot down, and everything's just a fucking nightmare, and everything's a slog and a hassle and a stress, because you say something that goes against the grain, you're immediately wrong, you know. And it's just been an absolute pleasure, as always, to see so many familiar faces coming into the chat, into the comments, every single week on week. It's great to see new faces popping in and out. It's great to see people who haven't seen the series and haven't watched the series for a couple of years come back into it and get stuck back into it. It's all an absolute pleasure, and I'm blown away by the response of you guys, and everything has been absolutely amazing. And I can't leave without saying a massive thank you to Dan of Mushy Gaming, as always, for providing me with the Crawl Room scoreboard that you see, the intro that you see, the driver icons that you see at the corner of the screen, and for that fantastic podium, once again, with the drivers there spraying the Yazoo, the Frosty Jack's apple cider, and of course the champagne for George Russell. A massive thanks as well, as always, goes out to Dave of F1 Games PlayStation for providing me with the Jolie and Palmer skits that you all know and love. Christ knows how many he's done this season, but it's been a hell of a lot, hasn't it, Dave? I know it's been a hell of a lot, and I appreciate all your efforts, bud, as always. So, a massive thanks as always, guys. Logging out of 2022. It's been an absolute pleasure. It really, really has. From the bottom of my heart, thank you so, so much for everything. For everything you've given me this season. It's been a pleasure. And to make an announcement just before we end as well, of course, the 2023 Team Crawl Room will return. We're going to have a Team Crawl Room. It's going to be exciting, to say the least. There's going to be more content for you, more Formula One content, more moaning, and there's going to be team-specific moaning once again every single week after every race. So I can't wait. Thank you so, so much for watching, guys. And as always, much love.